Well, here we are at Manhattan Neighborhood Network, El Barrio Firehouse, and today we are presenting the inaugural exhibit of Maria Jimenez's Cell Addiction. And with us is Maria Jimenez, a native New Yorker, originally from Corona, Queens, and now returning and living in Jackson Heights. And we are going to be speaking about her exhibit, the theme specifically of cell addiction in our present society, and particularly the impact of the use of cell phones among our youth. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you very much for having me.
So Maria is a multi-talented artist, and in fact, she originally was considered being a soprano diva, and at the age of about 14, she decided to put music aside and delve into the art world. She was particularly inspired initially by her sister Evelyn, but yet it turned out that Maria was a much better artist, or visual artist, and so now here we are after dozens and dozens of exhibits, an established career as a visual artist, and now as an art educator. One of the things that I want to ask you, Maria, is talk to me about your life as a child growing up in Corona, and particularly going to PS 19 on 99th Street. How was that?
Hi. Well, I actually I grew up in Lower Manhattan till I was maybe 5 or 6, and then my family bought a home in Corona. So I was about maybe in 2nd grade, and we ended up going to PS 19, my sister and I. So when I was there, I wasn't exposed to art as much, but it was just acclimating myself to the neighborhood and just playing like regular kids. So basically it.
And so you used to see your sister sketch,
Mm-hmm.
and that got you very much interested in doing the same. How did that happen?
Yes, my sister went to fashion industries, and she would sketch, around the house. And then, this was when I was in junior high, and I noticed that, I really kind of liked what she was doing. So then I would sketch occasionally, not really thinking about.
What would you sketch?
The figure. She was into fashion design.
Okay.
So I remember doing the pelvis a certain way and the rib cage a certain way. It's like, oh, I like the design, the way the body moved, and the way the clothes fit in the drawing. So I basically started sketching from there, and I was inspired looking at fashion magazines, and so that's what got me started, basically. So I would just take the drawings that I would see and kind of embellish them a bit. Actually, that I drew and that I would see, and then it began from there.
Okay. And when did you start developing your expertise? Because you're known for your portraits.
Mm-hmm. I was I would say, when I started going to high school, after I took the exam in 8th grade, I didn't pass the test. So
How was that for you?
Well, it was devastating because
It was.
I wanted to go into high school for art design. So, but it's okay. I went to my neighborhood high school.
Which was what?
Newtown High.
Newtown High.
Yeah, so we went to the Annex, which was in Horace Harney Expressway.
Okay.
So.
And for our viewing audience, that is in Lefrak City,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So basically, they would bus us to Lefrak City, and there actually I did in junior high. I used to sing soprano, but then in high school, the 9th year, I used to play the bassoon. So it was either playing the bassoon or finding a career again in the arts. So I took the exam again when I was in 9th grade, and then I passed it.
So you read music as well?
Yes.
Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you still have the instrument?
I don't.
You
The
don't.
bassoon, you need large fingers,
Right.
and the reed and my mouth would get very swollen when I would I would spend 45 minutes blowing into the reed. But it was a great experience, though. I don't regret the path that that's come along.
Well, we have a very provocative exhibit here. There are 6 paintings on the walls of Luisa Capetillo Gallery. Do you know the history of Luisa Capetillo? Do you know who she was?
Just a little bit. Zenaida mentioned.
Yeah, she's a woman ahead of her time, born in Puerto Rico, and was in fact a union organizer. And at a time when women were not allowed to wear slacks, she did wear slacks in the Caribbean, and as a matter of fact, even got arrested in Cuba for wearing them at the beginning of the night, in the 1900s. But again, the fact that the gallery was named after Luisa Capetillo in her honor, and it seems that all the artists that MNN has brought to its walls have in fact been trailblazers. And certainly you have been, and you continue to be, and inspire your students to become artists as well. It's a tough field. Do you think, what exactly do you tell your students if they say, you know what, I want to live off of art?
Well, first I tell them to have confidence in themselves. You know, you need to have confidence, because if you don't listen to that inner voice that says I could, it's not going to happen. Right. So that's one of the first things. And then find an inspiration from other artists. You know, I definitely show art history and show different artists, and find a style that you like, and research it and try to learn as much as you can about the artwork. And then later on in my seniors, I tell them a little about the market, especially social media.
How do you find the market?
It's getting better for fine art.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there's a lot, social media is really opening doors for a lot of people. It's really connecting people all over the world. So you can find perhaps a show in Belgium or something where they find your work and they could call you. So if you're really good as an artist and technically proficient and have something to say, you will get calls. And of course, showing your work in different social medias, that's very important.
When you were in high school, you mentioned 2 high school teachers who were very instrumental in sort of giving you that friendly push at becoming an artist, and we really want to acknowledge them. Max Ginsberg and Irving Greenberg.
Yeah.
When did you meet them? I mean, when did they enter your life? In sophomore year or senior year?
I met Greenberg when I was in my 10th grade, when I first just got into the school, when I was a sophomore. So he would teach a watercolor class, and I was, really inspired by the way he taught, the way he would go around. His way of teaching wasn't really explaining, was more hands-on, working with you. So he invited me to his early morning class. So in early morning class, you start 6:30 till 8:30 before the class would start. In the morning.
That must have been some commute from Queens to Manhattan.
It worked out, because it was so early in the morning.
Right.
It wasn't. The congestion was pretty okay.
Right,
so
but you still have to get up early in the morning. That
we did.
Definitely showed your commitment to becoming an artist and your interest.
It was through his inspiration, also students that were there too, and Max Ginsberg. We all worked together, and we all inspired each other, and we all kind of pushed each other. So it was a way for me to then develop as an artist after.
And certainly they're very proud wherever they are.
Yeah.
Are they still
Well,
on the
one
earth?
is still alive. He's about in his late 80s.
Okay.
So Max Ginsberg, and he still teaches at the Art Students League. So, and the other unfortunately passed away, but he's still inspiration, just knowing him to all the
just knowing of all the, the dozens and dozens of exhibits that you've had throughout the United States. They have to be happy.
Yeah, I had group shows, so and I've had 2 solo shows, one at Garrison, and then we'll have this one here.
Yes. And there'll be many more. One of the things then from Newtown High School, then you went and you were accepted at the School of Visual Arts here in New York.
Well, after high school.
After high school?
Yeah, after high school, then I was accepted to the School of Visual Arts.
And there was someone instrumental there, who actually steered you towards the world of illustration as a graphic designer, your professor, Stephen Asael.
Yeah, Stephen Assel.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he's still around? Or
Yeah, he's still
retired?
around. Yeah, Steve Assel was definitely one of those that pushed me. You know, he was really amazing artist. You know, he's been in museums and he gives so much of himself and his family and his wife. And they, you know, I worked as an apprentice with him temporarily as an illustrator. He did illustration, then now it's totally fine arts. But he was one of those that said in our class, here, produce these pieces, and he gave us the assignment. So after you're done with these assignments, go out and get an illustration job. And it, you know, I did the assignments, and I went at the end of the semester, and you know, it was meant to be because I met an art director, who was here in the audience, and he gave me my first illustration job.
That's good. And who is this art director? His name?
His name is David Tomasino.
Okay,
And
David
he-
Tomasino.
David Tomasino. He was
Thank
an art
you.
director
Thank
to
you,
Scholastic. Yeah.
David, for being here also.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely there've been many men who have helped you throughout your journey as an artist. What happened? Then you were working and you've had a successful career as an illustrator. You've been an artist for close to 40 decades if we count the period as an adolescent,
Yeah.
right?
On and off,
Preteen,
yeah.
But so you decided to go back and get your master's in fine arts from the Pennsylvania Institute what is it? Academy, Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. How was that experience going back as an adult and working?
Yeah, it was a lot of work because
Yes.
I was working full-time teaching at the High School of Art and Design and doing what they call a low residency program, where you basically getting your degree through online courses, and then in the summer you would stay there for 7.5 weeks and work on your artwork or take classes or whatever the particular curriculum was.
So it is possible for students or individuals who consider themselves artists, visual artists. You know, there are opportunities to actually get your master's now.
There are. You don't
where-
have to spend two whole years. You know, your life doesn't have to stop, and you do the master's. You can do a low residency and work full time. It's possible.
So that's
It's a
good
lot of
thing.
work, but it's possible.
Right, but if you're committed to being a visual artist and exploring that side for many individuals who are now deciding to go back or change their careers and have dabbled, but yet they have this natural talent and they're looking for the credentials, because you need the credentials even to be a teacher now. The imposition of all these credentials to get your teaching license. Is that what happened to you?
Yes,
or?
correct. I needed
Yeah.
to get my master's. So I was looking for a school that would I guess I should say, my work is representational. So a lot of MFA programs don't really, I wouldn't say accept, but the work is a little more abstract, if you will. So to do representational work, I didn't feel I'd get the feedback or I'd get the critique that I would need. But I found that Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, which was one of the first art schools founded by Thomas Eakins, he, through his teachings and inspiration and working from life and using casts, I felt the school would be good for me. So there is a cast room where you draw from a statue, which I could, I still did that in the summer. I drew some casts, but I don't think another school would have provided me that opportunity. And then they gave me good feedback on my work, even though it was representational.
Right.
So
you would recommend the Institute?
I would recommend it if you're, if you want to go there full time or doing a low residency. It worked out. If you're interested in figurative work, of course they encourage all sorts of work. But for me personally, I felt it was a good match for me.
So when you're there, then your master's thesis.
Right.
Yes. So that's where you decided to go into to do research and just observing, just living now in these modern times, these crazy times, where we used to live. We can think back, or try to think back, at the time when we used to live without a cell phone. And now there is this sense of anxiety if you leave the house and you don't have your cell phone. It's like you're disconnected from the world. So that fascinated you.
Oh, it did. I think there's also a chemical reaction too. You want that constant reward by using your cell phone. So I think when apps were created and the phone, not only the phone used for communication, but through apps, it's
Yeah, and I mean, a phone was supposed to be communication, and I remember when everybody started getting a cell phone, but it was only for the purpose of communication, to have a phone, and it was a cool thing to have a phone, like in the early '90s, even 1991, 1992. It was great if you're driving and you're meeting someone and you can speak to each other. I'm almost there, and now it's another world altogether.
Yeah. So not only is there communication, but now you communicate through apps. So I found that there are companies creating apps, social media, to get you hooked. So, and they trigger emotions so that you're constantly looking at, let's say, Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram to get you hooked, so that, you know, that dopamine in your brain wants to constantly keep feeding itself. So you look into the apps to constantly feed that chemical reaction to get that reward.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, you mentioned some books that when you were doing your research.
Yes.
Would you be able to share with us?
Yes. So it was
some of the
Nir
authors?
Ayal. He's done some TED Talks, and he wrote a book on Hooked, how to create products that cause a habit. And that's the key word, habit. So using your apps creates a habit, and like any kind of addiction, you feed it. You know, you constantly feed it, and they know how to sell a product. And he did advertising, gaming, so he knows, and he understands the process of gambling, where you're constantly interested, you're constantly scrolling your phone like you would in a gambling arena, where you're, you know, constantly finding.
There was another author also that influenced your research.
It was mostly looking at Atlantic magazine. So
Atlantic magazine.
yeah, so looking through there, a lot of really good articles.
Right.
But there were a couple. Yeah. Offhand, I can't remember right now.
So let's talk about what's on the walls here at Luisa Capetillo, and we have some images right behind us where we have this woman in a bathtub. Why don't you just speak about that?
Sure.
Well, it's there.
Yeah.
It's just some other. But
Yeah.
the woman in the bathtub.
Right.
You see it when I first saw it. I mean, it's very impactful. But you think, is she taking a break, or is she going to drown in her bathtub? Or what's the story behind that?
Well, that was my hook. You know, I
Okay.
wanted, you know, when people look at it, they'll think, oh, is she drowning? Is she committing suicide? I mean, when people look at it, that's the reaction. It's like, okay, this is good. But then, like any kind of art, you want to look at it a little deeper. Like, what is it that's really going on? So I want them to visually look at the piece, and I was thinking perhaps if I use someone drowning with a context of narrative with it, people would look at it or look into it a little more. So in the painting, there's a narrative of Ophelia, which is also drowning, and as well as the figure drowning. So the narrative there is, you can, with cell phone, and you'll find there's cell phone and the iPad and the laptop, you can drown yourself looking at social media constantly. So, and as Ophelia, just drowning in that duality where she's constantly thinking of her father and Hamlet, and here is that same kind of duality where you're constantly looking at the phone, being present, and it's very hard to be present when you're constantly doing multitasking, doing everything. And I think psychologically you think that multitasking is a good thing, but you can't really focus 100% if you're doing 10 things at the same time.
Well, that's like the life of a housewife, where you've got a child to take care of, and you've got to clean the house, and you know, do the laundry. They're experts in multitasking.
Yeah.
But certainly, and particularly our youth, where they think they can multitask, or like they say in Spanish, puedo caminar y masticar chicle a la misma vez. I can walk and chew gum at the same time, you know. But there's something that's happening with the use of cell phones, and I think that you captured it. You know, the whole issue of, even although you may be in a group, and there's one particular painting where you see a lot of young girls all together, perhaps celebrating July 4th, and they all have cell phones, and they're together, and yet they're not. There's like a sense of isolation that you capture. You want to talk to us about that?
No, definitely, because I see they're in groups, and even where I teach, I see they're talking to each other, but you know, 3/4 of them are looking at their phones. So where's the real communication?
Right.
And like I said earlier, they're not present to each other like they did before.
Yeah.
So
there's the painting.
yeah. So as you can see, 3/4 of them are not really present to each other. Maybe 2 are just talking, that's the reality.
Right.
So when I say, you know, coming back to multitasking, is because, you know, you can't do all those things and be present.
Right. Although some people think they can, but they're
right.
And there's all, and it's not only like a disconnect. I mean, the use of multitasking, but when you're doing that, and when you're trying to engage another human being, it's kind of, I mean, coming from a different generation, you know, where in fact it could be perceived as even being rude, you know. So if you're talking to me and then I'm like looking at my phone and maybe responding to someone who sent me a text, or I want to make a comment on my Facebook page, but you're talking to me, you know, you're basically telling that individual, well, you know, okay, you're here, but you know, I got to take care of this, you know.
There's an erasure, if you will, with family connecting, because I find that parents are having a difficult time with their own children. Through research, and the book that you mentioned earlier was really part of the website, through Common Sense Media, there's that connection is being lost, and they're constantly arguing over, I need your attention, you know.
Right.
Stop
Or you
looking
have
at
to
the phone.
or you have to text your son so that they can respond to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So let's look at this particular painting, and there's a cord in the forefront of the painting. And what's that about?
Yeah, that is unplug, because it has the plug of the iPhone. Again, you're always plugged in. You know, it's kind of like the science fiction Borg. I don't know if you remember any of those science fiction Star Wars movies. So the Borg is like you're always, you know, connected in a certain way, or plugged in. One of the sayings in the science fiction television series was, resistance is futile because you're constantly plugged in. And the thing is, you want to unplug. So in that painting, I was thinking of the Borg in a way, like you gotta unplug. You gotta, you know, give yourself some time not to be on the phone. And part of it, there's a, if you look at the painting, there's an older person in the background and there's a younger person in the foreground. So the older person is unplugging in a certain way with, you know, even though he's reading, he can be easily unplugged, but the younger is constantly plugged in. So.
Right.
So it's a way of like, look at it, read the piece, and, you know, give yourself again some time to not be always looking at your phone.
Yeah, even though he's unplugged, but he's still looking at the.
Yeah.
And that's something hard to do. So this is going to be at these paintings will be at Eminent Luisa Capetillo Gallery throughout the whole month of July and towards the mid-August. Are you available to give to meet to meet art collectors
Sure.
or art lovers who would want to speak to you more.
Certainly.
Yeah, how can they reach you? At your email? Can you give a?
Yeah, they could give me, my email is, I'll just spell it out.
Yes.
It's MS, Miss,
Miss?
and Jimenez, JIM as in Mary, EN as in Nancy, EZ, email @gmail.com.
MS Jimenez email
At
gmail.com.
Mhm.
And
Or they can go to my Instagram account, which is at Maria C. Jimenez Art,
okay, Maria C. Jimenez Art.
or the website, which is mariajimenez.com.
MariaJimenez.com.
I'm sorry, mariajimenezart.com.
Okay, Maria Jimenez, JIMENEZ art.com. And we expect that this will be a successful exhibit, and you'll
So.
receive good response. We invite all the art critics of Manhattan in particular who will be seeing this to come by. The art is impactful, and the art is also for sale. So, and that's why you need to contact Maria. And one other thing that I did want to ask you about, you have two particular pieces as well that reflect your Dominican background. And one is like a still life with yucca, and it has like a shadow, the ghost of a Taino Indian. And the Tainos inhabited the Dominican Republic or the island of Hispaniola and the Caribbean and parts of Central America. And that is very interesting.
Thank
The
you.
difference. And you have, as we're seeing right now, you're also very successful with your portraits.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. Thank you for
know,
having me.
and
Pleasure
we
speaking to you.
really we wish you the best, and maybe next time then we'll see your work at a museum at a solo exhibit.
Oh, thank you very
know,
much.
even in Washington D.C. perhaps.
Perhaps.
Yes, and we encourage everyone to go to her website, mariacimenezart.com.
That's Instagram.
At Instagram.
The
And the
Instagram
website
is mariajimenezart.com.
Maria Jimenez Art. Okay.
.com.
So we come to an end of this program. We want to thank you again, Maria.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for listening to Manhattan Neighborhood Network's exhibit. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right.